Hey everyone, it's your host Ashley Yudkovic of the Chronic Convos podcast, and I am joined here by a very special guest, Andrew Patterson, who hails from British Columbia, actually. So this is really cool. I always love when I have a guest that is in a different location than I am, and not just a different state, but a different country altogether. Because what's really interesting is to see that things that we are going through that we think is only a problem, like in the US, for example, it's actually something that people experience in different countries as well. This episode is going to be a little bit different. And before I let Andrew take it away and talk all about himself, so as some of you know who have been following me, I was recently in the hospital. We're calling it a pseudo stroke. I had something called a complex hemiplegic migraine, which is a type of migraine that actually mimics stroke-like symptoms. And the reason I bring that up is because a few days before I had gone into the hospital, I had gone to an emergency room with very similar symptoms, although they weren't as bad as they ended up being before I was hospitalized. But when I was in the emergency room, I was there for 8 hours. And this is an emergency room I'm used to going to. I was born at that hospital, used to work at that hospital, have had multiple surgeries at that hospital. Um, but I was told that this was an anxiety attack. My right-sided numbness was an anxiety attack. My high heart rate was an anxiety attack, and I was given an Ativan and sent home. And so that is something that we like to refer to as medical gaslighting, because it definitely does take away and diminishes your symptoms and your feelings. And I want to make it clear that I have no problem with anxiety, but I do not have anxiety. But even if I did have that diagnosis, that isn't the issue. The issue is that your symptoms are diminished because sometimes the medical community does not want to spend that extra time really figuring out what the cause of your issues are. And so after I had gotten home and then a few days later had even worse symptoms and was brought in as a stroke patient, it was just interesting that I had to go through that. So when I was feeling well enough, I had made a post about who, in our community, in the autoimmune community, would love to, talk about medical gaslighting, because all of us at one point or another, and even if you're not chronically ill, you probably also have somehow experienced medical gaslighting in one way or another. And so Andrew and I have been friends for some time now, where we kind of intersected. We began following each other on Instagram and found out not only were we chronically ill, but we just had a lot in common. And so Andrew had volunteered to say, hey, I've been through a lot of medical gaslighting, and I would really like to share my story. So before I let Andrew dive into his story, I do apologize in advance because of the type of migraine I have and the medications that I'm still getting used to. I am having some trouble word finding, as well as thinking of what I want to say, and just kind of losing my train of thought. So all my followers and listeners out there, please bear with me. But I'm really excited about this episode because it's really important. And Andrew is just such an awesome person. And again, the fact that he is in Canada and has also experienced this is also what makes it even more interesting. So, Andrew, I'm sorry for that really lengthy introduction of myself, but I'm going to let you take it away. But firstly, tell us where you hail from. Tell us where people can follow you in terms of social media, or whatever platform you'd like people to be able to connect with you.
Yeah, I'm Andrew Patterson. From British Columbia originally. I now currently reside in Winnipeg, Manitoba. A few provinces east of British Columbia. Yeah, I'm on Instagram, AJP, I think underscore 1982. That's the one that I have, and the constant. Yeah, it's medical gaslighting. It's really not anything that anybody should have to go through. Especially, we trust our medical professionals to be just that, medical professionals. Granted, I'm sure they experience a lot of stuff, but people coming in with symptoms, obviously, such as yourself going in with your recent experience, that should have been taken a little more serious than it was. I don't understand it. I'm 41 years old now. I've been ill since I was 17, experiencing it. I think it was finally like 17 when I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. But yeah, early on, I remember like 15, 16 years old, not feeling well. It was like stomach aches. Going to the doctor, it's like something's not right. Something doesn't feel right. A lot of stomach pressure, a lot of stomach pain, and obviously like gastrointestinal distress, diarrhea, whatnot. It was a lot of it. I was told my belt was too tight at one point, and that was causing like an acid reflux. So I was given like acid reflux medication. Yeah, it's
okay. Now that is one I have not heard of before. Wow, that is definitely a new one for me. We hold on. We have to back up just a little bit here. With the medical gaslighting, being a social worker, I've seen it all. I work in the emergency room. I've heard it all. And again, being told like, hey, and I have seen it when, unfortunately, with mental illness, anxiety, depression, whatever, when you are told that that's what you have, people don't take you as seriously. And that's a stigma that I would love on this podcast, or a piece by piece, to really destigmatize, because it's just horrible. Because when you think about it, like you said, when you're not feeling well, you already have anxiety. Like, come on. And I even said that to this physician. I'm like, wouldn't you feel a little anxious if your heart rate is 150? Because that's not normal. And for me, I do have that history where my heart rate goes up. But okay, so forget about me for a second. Now fast forwarding to you. Okay, so you're 17 years old, and you had a doctor tell you your belt was too tight, and that's why you had acid reflux.
And it was causing acid reflux, and that's why I was getting like a lot of pain and pressure.
That blows my mind right now.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. I'm so sorry. Wow.
And it was like early experience like that where it was given medication to treat acid reflux. Taking that, and it's like, hey, it's 2 months into it, still same problem. It's like, loosen off my belt, tried a different type of belt, and it's like something more adjustable. I'll go to like an elastic waist pant. So it's not like that. It's like making changes based on doctor recommendation, trusting the fact that the doctor knows what he's doing and what he's talking about. And to find out a year later that still super sick, symptoms worsening. Go to another doctor.
Like 30 different belts at this point, and I'm sorry, I'm not trying to make fun of it, but I am trying to find a little bit of humor.
No, it's bad, and like I said, being so young, and then it's like finally going to a doctor, and the doctor's looking at you, taking the blood tests, doing the lab work, doing the follow up, make sure he's like, whoa, like there's no acid reflux at all. You've got something going on, right?
Okay, so at the start of this, was your blood work and everything normal, or did they
didn't
do blood work because they're like, oh, it's just acid reflux and
exactly. It was just acid reflux. Here's the pills. Yeah.
What? And were your parents with you at the time, or like?
It was with my mom. I was with my mom for that time, and she was just kind of like, "Oh, it's the doctor. It's what it is." It's like, okay.
Okay, so and no disrespect to your mom, but that's another thing that I see as a social worker here. But I'm finding out that, again, this is kind of like a worldwide thing, and like you said, we respect the medical community. We rely on our doctors to tell us like what the issues are, and so it's kind of like we're trained in a sense to kind of take what they say. And like, that's it. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. Okay, well, then that's what's it. But you and I, now being older, as well as being chronically ill, we're finding out, like, no, there's a lot more to that. And that story boggles my mind. But please continue.
But with that being young, 17, naive, right? It's like having symptoms worsening, obviously. It's like more frequent trips to the bathroom, starting to expel blood and like pass a lot of blood. And it's like, just thinking, it's just like, well, it's an ulcer. I have an ulcer, and it's what it is, and just got to keep taking medication. And it's finally started like not be able to eat certain foods would really bother me, and it's like based off of its ulcer in my stomach. I just have to take it easy.
You had an ulcer, or they said you might have an ulcer?
It was part of like the acid reflux, and I just, they said, being young and naive, assumed that the acid had given me an ulcer, and it was just irritated, right? I didn't want to go back to the doctor because the doctor told me my pants were too tight, or like my belt was too tight. I'm like, kind of just went with it.
And I mean, I don't blame you, but like, I'm sorry, that's gonna be a story that's wow.
Looking back on things now,
they definitely, yeah, wow.
If I could go back and have a conversation with the 17-year-old Andrew, it'd be a lot different advice for myself.
And that's the other thing too, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because I feel a lot of us, and with your experience especially, a lot of us had some of these issues going on when we were adolescents, and yet because we were adolescents, like I got injured a lot, and so I was just being told, oh well, she's just a kid. But now looking back, I'm convinced it was one of the different forms of arthritis I have that was rearing its ugly head. With you had ulcerative colitis most likely going on, and yet they were doing everything they could to say, no, that's not the case.
Exactly.
And there needs to be like better research, or better, I don't even know what needs to be done, but I feel that if, like with anything, if it can be easily detected and detected earlier, that maybe people won't suffer as much. Maybe there'll be better cures and better management. Like I'm not really sure, because there's just so many different things out there. But I mean, that must have been so scary for you, being so young, that you were expelling blood, and like,
oh yeah,
and you have this, excuse my language, but like this bullshit diagnosis that they're really not even confirming that you have. And like, so like, do you remember what you were going through, like emotionally at that time?
it was, is it ever going to get better? And it's just that constant pain. Like it wasn't comfortable. It was agony, like agony every day, and there's nothing really I could do for it. And like I said, it was.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And it was trusting the fact. It's just like, well, it's like finally getting to a point where it's like, maybe I should go back to a doctor, and that's like, this could be something more than acid reflux. But it's like the doctor said, it's kind of go through that, keep taking my medication, keep going through that. And I was finally at a point when I was with my dad, and I passed out and just fell over, collapsed. And it's like, my dad had his concerns too, right? Because it's like cleaning the bathroom, obviously. Me not knowing it.
17 still.
Yeah, I was still 17, and I passed out, and he said that's enough. He finally took me to an emergency room and said something's wrong with him. And it was at that point where they did blood work, they did workup, they did everything, and that stay from that day, I was in the hospital for 4 weeks. I had gotten that sick, and it's like me not even realizing how sick I was.
I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
And it's like I said, being in there for so long, it's like I had not realized how sick I'd actually gotten, and just kind of went with it, right? Like I said, 17, it's, yeah. I'd been dealing with a lot of stuff, right? And it's like missing school, everything. It was like crazy.
Right, and I'm sure, and as I'm learning too, because as I had shared with you, and you were one of the first people I shared it with, like, hey, guess what? I kind of am your twin because I have Crohn's disease. It's embarrassing having to go to the bathroom so often, even as an adult. So I could only imagine having to explain that to your friends, and having to explain that to your classmates. And then your teachers probably think, oh, he's just trying to ditch class or something like that. Like, what was that whole process like?
That was difficult. It got to the point where it was like I finally just removed myself from school. My parents completely understood as well. Like I said, having to go to the bathroom, having to go through what I went through and everything else, it's like the frequency to the bathroom, it'd be easier for me to stay at home. And at that time, like I said, it was late 90s at that point, so it's the technology of being able to take a course online wasn't there.
Right. Right. So homeschool,
So,
yeah, was definitely a different way of
yeah.
doing
And
things back then. Yeah.
even then, like I said, I just didn't go to school. I was part of the class. It's like my graduating year was supposed to be like 2000. So it was like the millennial grad thing. It was a big workup, but it's like I had been so sick and I'd ended up being sick for 2 years. So I missed my grade 12, missed my grade 11 years basically. I had to make that up post. And it's like I ended up graduating like 2003. It was like the final year that I got my high school diploma and everything else and graduated high school here. So,
Know that that wasn't your fault, and I hope
yeah,
this day you don't like blame yourself because it was out of your control. And again, this is just another invisible way, or a way that people who aren't chronically ill like don't realize how it impacts your life, like how being chronically ill can impact your life, and especially what this diagnosis journey looks like and why it takes so long to get diagnosed. Like, I
yeah,
am just, it just boggles my mind that you were bleeding. And
yeah.
when you were bleeding, I mean, the doctors still didn't say anything that wasn't concerning to them. Like before you passed out, that wasn't concerning to them.
No, they had asked the frequency and like how much blood, and it's like at that point it wasn't much when I went to the doctor. So they're like, "Well, it's not that much. Like it should clear itself." And I was like, "Okay." You said
Well, I
17
don't.
years old. It's like knowing nothing. It's like,
I mean, out here in the U.S., if you have blood in your stool, that's not a good sign. Doesn't matter if it's like a smidge or a ton. Like that's
yeah,
not a good sign either way.
yeah.
Um, so and again, did you go for a second opinion, or like you said, your mom was like, "Well, it's the doctor, and this is what they're
That
saying."
was it, right? And at that point,
Right.
it was the doctor. So it's like awesome, right? And you
So
figure it
not
out.
that you, I'm sure. Well, I'm sure you have a form of prom or something, right?
Pardon?
You have a form of prom or something like that,
Yeah, it
or
was grad. Like, yeah, we have like your graduation ceremony and stuff like that. So it's like I
so you
missed
had to
out on
like
all
all
that.
of that too.
Yeah, I missed out on that. But like I said, at that point, it was more concerned about my health. Like I wasn't much of a school person anyway. So it's like,
Right, but still being so young, and then so how did you
yeah,
explain that to your friends that hey, I have to leave school, or were they understanding, or
that was the hard part.
yeah,
I had like a close group of friends that kind of like somewhat understood what was going on, but didn't really understand what was going on. Obviously, like a good group that was in the hospital regularly and stuff like that. But they had all graduated at that point. Much like you, I hung out with older kids, so
right.
it's like they had graduated the year before, so
Okay,
they had
so
already been out of school.
even though you were
They
missing graduation, it didn't feel like it because your friends had already graduated. So okay, so
exactly.
that was got it. Okay,
Yeah, and then it's like having to go back that year after where I was finally like well enough to go back to school to try and take some courses. They sent me back to the high school that I actually attended. And all the kids that were in the younger grades now see me, and it's just like, hey, there's the dumb guy that didn't graduate because he wasn't smart enough, right? And it's just like nobody knows the story behind why I was missing school, so they just assume that I wasn't passing classes and then I had skipped a bunch of school and stuff like that. And it's like teachers, even same thing. They assumed, right, that it's like I was just skipping school because I didn't feel like going. So that first year back was just so ridiculous. I didn't feel like going. I got my full credits for 11. And then for my grade 12, I ended up going to like an after school. Like it was
like
a
an
place
adult.
called JobWorks. Yeah, it was like an adult education center where they can give
Yeah.
you
We
the
have those
GED
out
kind
here
of thing.
too. Yeah, like a
I was
continuing
like,
education.
I'm
Yeah.
like, screw it. I don't want to deal with kids and their problems and that assumption that I was sick. It's like I'll just go sit in a classroom with other
And
adults.
by this time, had you had a diagnosis,
I
or
had, yeah, that
okay?
when I was hospitalized for the 4 weeks there, it had gone through. They ended up doing like the full CAT scans, MRIs, ultrasounds, like you name the test, they could do it. It was like they finally realized that there was something really, really, really wrong, and I'd been put, like I said, up to like 30 pills, like all kinds of IVs, everything going through all of that. Not being able to eat. Like I said, I was a healthy 210 pounds at my peak before I started to get sick.
Were you like
And
involved in like
yeah, I
athletics?
played a lot of hockey, typical in
Oh,
Canada, so it's hockey. But I played a lot of hockey, a lot of sports and
I
stuff.
just got what you said. Sorry.
Yeah. I had a job. I'd been working since I was 14, so I'd already had like a pretty good job at a retail store. I had to quit
Right, so you probably had to explain that to
job.
your employer too. So yeah, it's just like this snowball
Yeah.
that people like just don't realize. It literally affects every facet of your
Yeah.
life, and like people just don't get it. They don't
Yeah.
realize that.
No, they just see somebody who turned out to be lazy. Like I said, lazy.
Right,
But
or you're looking for sympathy because I've gotten that one too.
yeah,
Like it's like,
that's terrible.
and they'll say, "Oh, well, you don't have cancer," and it's like, well, um, I'm glad that's what I have to strive
That's
for,
bad.
and again, not putting down anybody who has cancer. I mean, I'm just saying it's just crazy how people just like jump to that. Like that's the
Yeah.
worst thing they feel that somebody can have.
Yeah.
And again, they don't realize these other silent diseases. I mean, so you were 17. So did you need a blood transfusion when you were in the hospital? Or like how bad was it that you had
There
to
is,
sit there for 4 weeks? Because if you get a diagnosis, I mean, that's a really long time to be in the hospital.
yeah, coming out of that, I think that point I had 2 bags of blood.
Oh my gosh.
And
Whoa.
then, like 6 months after, I had another flare, which put me in the hospital again. That time I was in there for 7 weeks. And in that 7 weeks, I had, at one point, I had gotten 5 bags. It was so bad. And that was the worst that I could say it had gotten at that point in my younger years. At one point, the doctor in the hospital had told my parents that it's like, if things don't improve, I probably won't see 18. I was down to 120 pounds from
From what did you
from
say?
two like 215. So it's like I could count all my ribs from the top. Like
Food or so were you on a feeding tube at this point?
no feeding tube. It was just IV liquid and nutrition through IV.
Or
Like
something like that?
my system could not handle anything at all.
Really? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
So it was like constant agony. Yeah, it wasn't the best of times, but got through that, came through. Finally, there's medications. I had a gastrointestinal GI specialist who was on top of everything. He was really, really, really good. Figured out a good cocktail of medications. One of them
to find that, and as you know, even once we find a cocktail that works, it doesn't always stay permanently working. That's happened to me more times than I can't even tell you how many times that's happened to me, and I'm sure you've been through that as well.
The one medication that they put me on, which like I said, you're familiar with, is prednisone. It was a high dose steroid right off the bat to try and.
Right now, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It was prednisone, and then they had introduced another drug that had just come out. It was called Imuran, not Imuran, Asacol. And Asacol was like new onto the market for UC. It had gone through testing and stuff.
Was that
out of the
or that was another type of
no, it was just a pill. It was a form of a pill that was able to go through the stomach, and it would actually like break down and dissolve in the intestine. So it's survive through the stomach and then release in the intestine to treat the areas.
Do you have to have any of your ulcers removed? Like, were they that bad, or they were able to eventually heal themselves?
Basically, the way that the ulcerative colitis, the best way I could describe it, it's like if you fall off your bike while you're riding your bike down the street, you get like really bad road rash on your arm.
Right.
How it's like not a deep cut. Some spots might be deeper than others, but it's scabs and stuff like that.
Right.
Ulcerative colitis is basically road rash on the inside of your intestinal lining.
That's a really good analogy, actually.
Yeah, it's like, so as you get foods and stuff that pass through it, it doesn't really have a chance to scab, or it'll peel the scabs off, and it just keeps irritating it. And the more it has, the more irritated it gets.
It's like you keep falling off your bike in the same.
Essentially, yeah. Or wearing a sweater without a bandage, and it keeps rubbing on the wound. Right, it's just going to keep getting worse.
No, that makes sense.
So I'd finally medication was able to control it, and they controlled it really well. It got to a point I was off medication.
Really?
Like it was good. They took
for a little bit then.
Yeah, they had taken me off prednisone, put me on another drug, which is kind of similar, called Imuran. Imuran and the Asacol combination. Took that every day, and it was good. After about like 2 or 3 years, I'd been perfectly fine with it, to the point where they started to reduce the amount of Asacol I was on, reduce the Imuran.
So you were in your 20s at this point then?
Yeah, going into my 20s, like say like early 20s, 21, 22. I'd started my career at the railway at that point, because I'd been healthy and actually like had a good full-time job. Everything was going good.
For our listeners who don't know, so what do you do for work? Because you're saying your time at the railway. So.
Currently, I am a locomotive engineer. I drive passenger trains. I work for our passenger rail network here in Canada, Via Rail Canada.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we'll talk about that a little bit.
Lots of stuff.
Later on, but I just think it's such a cool, like, when I found out, I'm like, that is such a cool, like, career, and, like, I know nothing about it and want to know everything about it, so that's really awesome. But that's crazy that you were so sick, but you found a cocktail that worked for you, and then you were able to kind of achieve some normalcy again. But before we go back into that, so when they finally figured out a diagnosis, like how did you process it? How did you compartmentalize it? How did your family like deal with this? Or were you just like, okay, that explains a lot? Like how, like, what went through your head there?
In my head, it was like, what did I do? Like, was it like, what did I do? What was I doing wrong?
You mean to deserve this, or?
Well, it was, how did this happen to me? Like, is it something that I did? Was it foods that I ate? Like, was it my lifestyle? Like I said, I was rebellious in my youth. I smoked a lot and I drank as well, right? So it's like,
That's okay, no judgment here.
Did I bring something on myself? And that was like my first go-to. So it was lots of questions for the doctor and the medical team. I really like to dive into things. It's like, if something's going on, I need to know. And
right, yeah.
That's the way I've always been.
I have to know, like, you know, I do Dr. Google a lot, but it's so I can be informed. It's not to be like, oh, well, I must have this, and this. It's more just so I can wrap my head around it.
Going through it, it turns out it was nothing that I had done myself. Believe it or not, it's hereditary, from what I understand. The severity of it obviously could differ. It manifests itself in different ways, like a lot of autoimmune or issues like that, right? It's always the manifestation of how it comes about, the severity. But yeah, it was my dad's great grandmother, I guess, like long time ago. She had died of a miscellaneous illness that they didn't know, and it was stomach related. So 90% sure that she had some form of colitis or GI tract issue.
And it's interesting you say that, because I'm really diving into my immunology as well, because as I've told you, I'm the lucky one that seems to be the only one with all of my issues. But my mom's grandmother, her maternal grandmother, used to be called a hypochondriac all the time, because she was in and out of the hospital all the time, and they never could figure out why. And so, like you're saying, a miscellaneous diagnosis. So I'm convinced she had maybe at least one of these problems that I'm having, because back then they didn't know what else to call it. So they called her a hypochondriac, and they're like, oh my God, here she is again. Like, you know, kind of what we call in today's terms, and I hate it, but a frequent flyer of the emergency room or of the hospital. So to your knowledge, your grandmother's the only one that had UC, like your parents don't have it, nobody else has it?
No, parents are fine. I have an older sister, and she seems to be fine. So it's like,
so how does that feel? Because like for me, it brings on a whole nother level of like isolation. So like, what does that do? What, like, when you found out, you know, when you were diagnosed, and then once you like dove into it a little bit deeper and realized like, hey, I'm the only one in my family that has this, like what?
It didn't really bother me in a sense of that. Like I said, my parents were really supportive of it once they had figured it out and realized what was going on. Yeah. Like I said, family was really supportive through a lot of things, and just making sure that I was healthy and able to maintain myself, and had lots of stuff to do. Like I said, it's getting so sick for so long, I lost all my muscle mass. tried to gain weight and try to rebuild, and it's like have my parents' support through all of that was just absolutely amazing. Be able to go through things, make sure that I got the nutrition I needed, anything I needed from anywhere. Like parents were there for it, right? So it's like really have that, which being 18 at this point now, like I said, having to rely on your parents to go out and buy you stuff and get you stuff is kind of like you lose that sense of like independence that you had, right? Where it's like you want something,
right? And I've been there too, because like I said, some of my stuff started happening when I was younger too, and I lived at home for a lot longer because I was so sick. Like
yeah.
I didn't move out until I was 26 because I was just always so sick. I was in and out of the hospital, but I didn't really know why, and so I can relate in that sense. Like here I am trying to gain my independence and everything, and yet I can't because my body is like, just kidding. You have to do this, 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 and this. And it's like, who else is going to help you? But I'm glad that you do have such a supportive, family. And so the group of friends you were referring to, were they supportive during this? Were they understanding?
They'd come over, like I said, it would be like a movie night, just basically stuff like in-house, right? Or it's like they'd come over and visit me. They wouldn't expect me to go out or do anything like that.
Right.
The occasional trip, like I had a friend, her job was taking pictures of houses for real estate. So she'd be like, hey, I'm going out. I'll be around this area for the afternoon. I'm going out for an hour. Do you want to come with me? Kind of just like get out, go see stuff, go do something, but not too long, right? Not too exhausting. It was like really good to have support networks like that as well, which having a small group of friends or like a few friends that can really understand what you're going through makes a huge difference in a lot of things.
Right, or even if you don't completely understand, just being supportive, like saying, hey, let's have a movie night, or hey, I'm going to be in the area, I just want to come and say hi. Like, I think I talked about it in a previous episode. Just saying like, hey, even if you're having a get together, like, hey, is it okay if I have a veggie tray? Like, is that something you can eat? Like, just something like that. Or, hey, I have a microwave if you need to bring your own food. Like, just something like that. Like, you don't have to understand the ins and outs of our diseases, right? Because there's probably parts that we ourselves, as much as we think we understand everything, we probably don't understand every part of it too. So people don't realize that just doing something like that, like saying, hey, I'm coming over for a movie night, or hey, we're having a get together. What can you eat? Because with UC, a lot of people don't realize that there is it's limited in a way, but you have to be really careful what you put in and out of your body.
And the oddest thing is what you could eat one week and safe food, right, is the next week could turn on you.
Right, exactly.
And it's just like,
and one of my favorite conversations with you offline is like, you're always telling me like what you're cooking for your work week, and I just always find it really fascinating, and like and like you said, it's always varying because, and I don't have to ask you why, I just already know now, knowing, I already knew about UC, but now that I have Crohn's myself, it's just like, you don't even have to explain it to me. I get it. Like, I know why you can't have this for this week, So, so with the 4 weeks though, so you were in the hospital for 4 weeks because they just needed to get like your flare, like completely.
They needed to get you. I was so malnourished. Like I said, it was a week. Like I said, I lost all my muscle mass too, right? And I was like going to the bathroom so frequently. My heart rate was through the roof, right? Obviously being so weak, so ill. It's like getting up and going to the bathroom. It was the humiliating point of giving a bedpan. It's like, you got to go to the bathroom. Here's a bedpan. We don't want you to get out of the bed and walk to the bathroom. We're afraid you're going to have a heart attack. It was like that bad, right? It's like
17, no less. Wow.
Yeah. It was something that I wish nobody'd ever have to go through. It was a bad process.
And I am curious, at least out here. So I think, like with UC and like Crohn's, because it can be detected earlier on. It is one of the autoimmune issues that actually is something that can be detected like in adolescence. And so I feel like there's a better understanding. But with that did it seem like they understood it, like, or like that they didn't really know how to treat it because you were an adolescent? Or you said you had a really great GI doctor, so did it just seem like, okay, no, this is, we've seen this before, or we haven't seen this before? Like, what was your experience with that?
The medical team at the hospital at the time when I had first gone in, they were really like perplexed by it. It wasn't something that was a common issue, obviously.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Fortunately, it was a hospital that had a GI specialist,
Right.
and he was an older guy, but he was able to call in. They called him in, and he had come in and had gone through it. It's like that's where I had to go through like my first scope. Gone through that, and it was once he had done the scope and went in there, and he knew right off the bat, like right
Right.
away. So I
Yeah,
was like,
I'm sure you lit up like a Christmas tree, and
yeah,
I hate to have that kind of sense of humor, but like
yeah,
that's what I was expecting when they looked at my scope too. Like,
right,
yeah,
yeah, 100%. And I was fortunate that I'd gone to that hospital because that's the hospital the idiot worked out of. So it was able to start treatment, and he easily explained what had been going on and asked me like previous symptoms, and it was like the reflux, and that's where he had even done like the, oh geez, yeah, I know that wasn't reflux. So it's like this whole time I'd been taking like medication for acid reflux and all of that without acid reflux, and I was just like, okay, so there
is
goes.
your esophageal erosion worse?
I don't know if it had any effect of it. Obviously, it wasn't
Okay,
good for
that's
my
good.
stomach. So, but yeah, that was the first time where I really had like that, lost that confidence in any medical professional, where it was like that doctor had no idea what he was talking about.
Yeah, and just like the
I was kind of
difference.
like,
Yeah,
yeah. And
yeah,
then from there, right, it's like how, it's like that trust, right? You have that trust in a medical professional, and you kind of get let down, right? So now it's, you don't want to have to question everybody. Like I said, then you get like good doctors, and you now know for sure you've had really good doctors, and you've had doctors where you're kind of like, okay. But
right. And
yeah,
for you, I mean, I want our listeners and viewers to realize, and and you've painted this picture, but this was life threatening for you. Like, this
yeah,
wasn't like, oh, you might have a cut, or I'm trying to think of something like very basic, or like, oh, you have a cold, and so here, just go take something for it. I mean, this was life threatening. You said you had at least 2 or 3 blood transfusions. You lost over 100 pounds. I mean,
yeah,
you were not in good shape.
no,
So, like, the fact that, and I have this burning question, and you said it's been some time. I mean, it's been 30 plus years now, so hopefully I can ask, did you ever do any legal, like, malpractice or anything with that doctor? I mean,
not with
like,
that doctor.
I'm sorry.
I had I had another experience later on where I had actually
Okay.
gone to like our board of physicians and surgeons with a doctor.
Okay. But with this original one, you didn't do that.
No, at that point he was, yeah, yeah, it was chalked up to I'm just never going back there. And a few years later, like I said, that practice is no longer there either. So I think
Well,
he had at that
hopefully
point
somebody
retired.
put them out of business for that reason. And like, I
Yeah,
hate to say that, but I mean, you could have died if, I mean, and the fact that you like passed out, I mean, my heart is breaking like the whole time I'm like hearing your story, like of what you've been through. And, and I know, and we're not done talking yet, but just from
no,
hearing you, I mean, you still have just like such a positive attitude, and you're still so, um, you're just such a nice person too, like to have been through so much and everything. And do
yeah.
you need to take a break? If you do, like, let
Oh
me
no,
know. Okay, all
no,
right.
I'm good.
Because I tend to move around too, because I get uncomfortable. I like shift my weight. So just let me know at any time, and I don't mind that our viewers and listeners are hearing this, because I need them to understand again too. This is our daily lives. We shift around a lot. We move around a lot. It's not because we're antsy. It's just we're trying to
Yeah,
get comfortable, and sometimes things just happen. And especially with UC and Crohn's, I mean, sometimes we just have to rush to the bathroom too. And, I don't mind having that conversation and talking about that and just being upfront about it because it's the truth. This is our lives, Um, okay, so my other question too, and then, we can, talk about, like the other experience that you had that you were referring to is, when you found out that you did have UC, what went through your head that this was like, wow, this is a lifelong thing I'm gonna have to deal with? Like, what was your level of understanding once you kind of were able to process?
It was all learning curves, like basically going through it. And like I said, as I was taking medication and getting better, I was like hitting a remissive state where it's like you get that reassurance, it's okay, what I'm doing is working, everything's right. Knowing triggers, knowing symptom onset, right? It's like obviously you're starting to feel more tired, lethargic. I'd get canker sores. That would be like my telltale. Where I'm starting to hit a flare, I'd get like the mouth ulcers and stuff like that. So it's like that would start to happen.
Oh, that's so painful.
Yeah, so I'd hit that or get that, and it'd be like, okay, something's starting to happen. It's like time to lower the workload, take it easy. Obviously, make due diligence, go to bed earlier, get rest.
What's rest, though? We'll dive into that because you and I talk about that offline all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, rest is very, very important, but even then, more so than at the opportunity that I had to be able to rest, right? And it's like take my diet, and I'd hit my bland diet where it'd be basic chicken broth, toast, crackers. You hit those safe foods, right? Where it's like that's it, right? Like you don't want to
diet of a king right there.
Yeah.
Champion, right?
Yeah. Water, just anything that won't cause any irritation, and hopefully control the flare before it gets bad and kind of mitigate it right now. Like I said, go through that. But yeah, learning through all of that, like I said, I was able to achieve a remissive state for a while where it was like starting to lower the medication. There was at one point where I'd gone a year and a half without medication at all. It was starting to, like, I wanted to go eat pizza. I'd eat pizza. It's like no dietary restrictions, no issues.
Wow.
This is all through my 20s. And like I said, at this point, I was like working for the railway. I was doing really well.
And you had the confidence too, like, okay, my bathroom habits are more normalized now.
Well, that's it. Yeah.
I can just live a normal life.
That was it. And
awesome. Wow.
Going through it, it was finally, I guess, towards like where I was like 29 now. I'd started to get like more flares more frequently. I had owned a house at this point. I had been out on my own. I'd been at the railway for about like 6 years. I'd become a locomotive engineer, went through all the training and stuff like that. So I was working for a freight company. Awesome. Out of town a lot, very odd hour, like working on call. And then when you get called to go to work with freight, you're usually on 12 hours. And then you lay over at the away from home terminal for up to 18 hours, and then it's another 12 hours to come home. So it's like you're gone for 2 days.
Does that mean you're like sleeping over there?
In a hotel, yeah. You're at a hotel at the away from home location.
Gotcha. Okay. Because I know like a layover in an airport, but that's a little different. Yeah. So that's why I just wanted to make sure like our viewers and listeners know like what the difference. Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So it's like that had its challenges and its stresses as well. And I noticed like I was starting to get more and more frequent like flare-ups, and I was like, it's like here it comes again. But it's knowing more, right, going to the doctor right away. It's like I'm starting to get more frequent flares. I'm starting to have more issues more frequently. Started back on some medications to help try and control it. It's obviously medications worked to a point, but it's like I noticed like a lot of it was the workload. There was a lot of internal stress with the job. I got into a training program with the company I'd worked for where I started to train new hire employees and do that where they were really good. And I started a team, working on a team, implementing new training. So being off the road, I was able to work like kind of a Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, which was like a regular opportunity, which was really good, especially to help build routine and pattern, especially for eating, which controlled my flares and took a lot of that internal stress off of me, which was good. And
it's nice that your employer was so understanding, because I I'm sure this happens everywhere, but it's hit or miss out here in the States.
Yeah.
And at least out here, you do not have to say what your disability is, but they do have to be able to provide some sort of accommodation for you. Yes, there are times where, just depending on the nature of the job, that they can't. When your flares started happening, did you still have the same GI doctor you had all those years ago when you were first diagnosed, or did you have to find a new doctor, or how did that work?
I had gone back to the GI that I had, the first one that diagnosed me and everything.
Okay.
He was really good, but he was older at this point by the time I got a hold of him.
Unfortunately,
And he had only been there for a year. He's like, I'm sticking around for one more year. He's like, I'll follow up, do more frequent follow-ups with you and stuff. But he's like, I'm turning my practice over to another group, which was like two guys that were going to take over his practice that had gone through training and stuff like that. And I'd worked under him for a little bit.
Okay.
And slowly transitioned over to them throughout that year. Like I said, I started smoking cigarettes when I was like 14. And at this point, like I said, I'm 29, coming up to my 30th birthday, and still getting like odd flares. I had taken a job with the railway, like from this training program, and it ended up turning into an accommodated management position. So it's like I left my union ranks as like a locomotive engineer and actually became a manager where I'm implementing training and doing training. So it's like I was traveling out of town, flying out of town, going like all over Canada. It was pretty awesome, but stressful at the same time. It's like leaving home, traveling.
You're not really resting a lot because you're traveling. It's kind of like that double-edged sword there.
I had hit that point where it was like coming up to my 30th birthday, and I'd realized I'd been smoking for more than half my life. And I was like, you know what? This isn't good. It's like transition to quit. And it's like I quit cold turkey. Actually successful at it.
So good for you.
I was successful at it, but the shock of quitting cold turkey caused my body.
Your body didn't respond very well to that.
Caused my body to get extremely stressed out, which caused a really bad flare with my colitis. And it's like, if anybody that's listening that smokes,
go ahead.
that wants to quit, that has UC, still quit smoking. Absolutely quit smoking. It's not good for you. Cold turkey, prepare your body for it because it's a shock to your body. But yeah, it ended up going into a flare, and the flare had gotten really bad. I had to take some time off work. I had went and saw the new GI doctor that had replaced the old one.
Right.
Here comes our best friend again. Prescription number one, here's the prednisone. They put me on the highest dose for 5 weeks straight. He had gone on vacation. Well, he had prescribed me the medication, referred me to the...
Oh, no. I kind of have a feeling where this is going, but go ahead.
Referred me to the other doctor in his office if I had any issues. So as I'm taking this prednisone, going through it, I'm getting really thirsty. I'm not feeling myself. I'm constantly drinking water, constantly just feeling thirsty. I'm hungry. I'm like moody. I'm all over the place. You chalk it up to prednisone. Prednisone, a steroid.
Prednisone, you kind of like turn into like the Hulk in a way.
You're crying in a corner 1 minute, the next minute you're like flipping stuff all like you're just, the moods are like here to here.
Scientifically or chemically, it's an amazing drug for what it's meant to do.
Yeah, long term.
Otherwise, it's like the worst drug ever you could imagine. And on a later episode, because I really want this to be about Andrew's story, we'll talk about prednisone, or maybe Andrew, you'll come back on another episode, and we can just talk about all the good and just to be a prednisone related episode. But please continue.
So I take the prednisone, wasn't feeling well, made an appointment, went and saw his other specialist, told him, it's like, what's going on? I'm not feeling well, like on and on. I'm really thirsty. And that was like the one point that really stood out, is like how thirsty I was. I could never quench my thirst. His suggestion was to go buy the tubes or tins of Gatorade powder, drink more sports drink. Like that quote
Right,
unquote, those
electrolytes,
words,
right.
drink more sports drink was what his recommendation was. And I was like, okay. So on the way home, stop at the store, go buy a couple tins of powder, and I was like, I'm drinking this. Like I was probably drinking 10 liters of fluid a day at this point. Like it was bad.
And you already, for people who don't understand prednisone, you already gain a lot of water weight. I look a little better today, but last week I had the moon face because of all the water weight, and I'm very distended right now. You can't tell, but I lost 20 pounds with my Crohn's, and I gained 20 pounds back in a very short amount of time just due to all the water weight from the prednisone. But yeah, so for people who don't understand, and yet it makes you really thirsty, and yet you're losing fluids, but you're gaining fluids, and you're retaining fluid, and it's just not a pretty picture. So okay, so here you are with your Gatorade and drinking a lot.
Drinking lots of it.
Yeah.
Finally at a family function, I ate an entire watermelon. It's like delicious summertime.
Right.
I was
wrong with watermelon. Okay.
There was something really wrong with me afterwards. I was like completely out of character, not myself at all. Yeah, it's like not a proud version of myself. Absolutely, it was just like all over the map. And then finally, I started to, I guess, like pass out as I was like sitting down. It's like partner at the time and my parents are like, hey, like something's not right. So my parents came and like, dad again, like, yeah, something's not right. Take me to the hospital. They can't figure out what's going on. I'm belligerent at this point, like just completely out of it. And I finally looked at the nurse. I said, something's not working between here and here.
Right.
And it's like at that point they're kind of like, I'm like I don't.
But yeah, go ahead.
It's like I can't explain what's going on with me. I'm angry. I'm upset. I'm yelling. I'm swearing at people.
To me a few weeks ago, but yet I was slurring my speech, and but I was able to get the words out saying something isn't right. And for me, I had kept saying, I'm like, I think it's the prednisone. And like, no one except my primary care physician believed me. Like, nobody, they're like, no, it's not the prednisone. And and before you finish your story, I, as a social worker, have seen prednisone-induced psychosis. I've seen it. I know what that looks like. So when you're saying when this doesn't, when these aren't connecting, it makes complete sense to me clinically, but go ahead.
They took blood work. They had done lab work and everything to figure it out after they had finally like admitted me at that point.
What did they think it was at that point, or they were just doing observation at that point?
They checked my blood sugars, and in Canada, I'm not sure if it's the same for the US, but our blood sugar, it's millimeters or whatever, or milliliters. Completely different system from what you guys are used to with like ounces and stuff like that. It's
right. That's okay. You guys. Yeah.
So our normal,
whatever it was.
Our normal blood sugar readings would be between like a 5 and a 10. 10 would be like the high end, like 12 to 14. It's like you should probably go to the hospital.
I know, versions in my head.
My blood sugar when I had gone into the hospital was 68.
Oh.
Yeah, to the point where they had taken more blood to try it again, and when it came back at 72. So I was borderline diabetic coma at this point. And I had drank all the sports drink full of sugar. I had eaten an entire watermelon. I was going through diabetic. I like I said, I was like right there. If I had gone to bed that night, again, another instance where I probably wouldn't have woke up. I would have went into a diabetic coma and died of my sleep. Acid ketosis or something.
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can usually say it, just right now having issues.
And it had been going on, and that was the thirst. Side effect of prednisone.
Do you remember how much you were on? I'm just really curious what the dosage was.
I want to say it was 50 50 or 500. It was something like that. It's like the highest that you could get. I think
40 when well, this is milligrams, so
I think it was 50. I was taking like 5 pills.
Do you guys
so
do
I think
milligrams, or is that different?
milligrams. It was mgs, yeah.
Okay,
So I think each pill was 10 milligrams. Yeah. So I was on 5 pills.
You were on 500. I mean, I'm sure it exists.
I think it was 50. I'm pretty sure it was 50 for 5 weeks.
I don't know if we would be having a conversation.
No.
500. But because I was on 40, and that's a pretty high dose because of how flared up I was. So yeah, 50 makes sense.
I actually kept the prescription bottle. I've got it like back in the other room because it was like never again. But yeah, it was. The doctors went through afterwards and told me it's a side effect of prednisone, that it can damage the pancreas. And the high dosage, like I said, being on, I guess, the 50 milligrams for 5 weeks straight at this point, it had damaged the pancreas, plus the years of prednisone use prior. There's no history in my family at all of any diabetes. I was not pre-diabetic. I'd been tested for it.
And you're a pretty healthy person, even before your UC. You said you were an athlete and everything.
Yeah. So they'd gone through and it had been figured out that the prednisone is what damaged the pancreas. And now my pancreas is permanently damaged. It still works. It doesn't work 100%, so it's classified as a type 2 diabetic out of it. It's the rare medically induced diabetes. So this is the side effect of prednisone, and this is like that medication. It really bothers me, but the doctor never explained it to me. After prescribing me such a high dosage for such a long period of time, I had spoken to another doctor, my family practitioner, about the medication and everything, and he kind of like, well, the doctors don't like to throw other doctors under the bus, even though they know that they're not right. He says it's like if I had been, he's like, if I had prescribed you that medication for that frequency, I would have had blood workup every week. He's like, were you given any blood workup? I said I was given nothing. It was here's your 5-week prescription. I'm going on holidays. See my counterpart. And going in there, obviously exhibiting symptoms of diabetes with constant thirst and everything else that goes along with it. It made 100% sense. I had gone to the board of physicians and surgeons with those 2 doctors, which it was a huge thing for me because these were both GI specialists. So it's like, to have GI specialists, they're very important, especially with people with UC and Crohn's and stuff like that. Right, but at the same time, it's like,
and now you're dealing with things that are not repairable.
That's it, right? It's like going that way. I reported the instances to the board of physicians and surgeons. I didn't take legal action against them at all.
Okay, it works a tiny bit differently out here, but it makes sense what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah, if I had been in the U.S., like, by all means, I probably would have.
Attorney, and then
exactly.
You would go to court, and then you would go to the board. We like to take extra steps because we're so cool like that. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Here, like I said, I was able to report them, and both of them are no longer practicing medicine. Out of that whole thing.
Found out if there were other patients that had it?
They wouldn't disclose anything else, but I know that both of them are no longer practicing, and that's all I know.
I have a feeling, not saying that your case wasn't enough, but I have a feeling, at least in the U.S., that there must have been multiple people for a physician anywhere to lose their license and to not be able to practice anymore. There has to usually be more than one, but oh my God, Andrew, my heart is just like broken hearing all of this. So you're
going through a huge flare that's not controlled at this point. Now dealing with diabetes, which for the first 2 months it was type 1. They didn't know whether to classify it as type 1 or type 2. And I was actually using insulin daily for the first 2 months. But then obviously I'm working with an endocrinologist now who's really good and on top of things.
I'm sorry.
This would be 5 years now, six years now.
Wow, so this was more recent. Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, this is like to this point, and it was these steps where it's like I was off of work I wasn't working. I wasn't doing my job. So it's like my source of income. Thankfully, I had a career at this point, and I had good like work benefits and sickness benefits and illness benefits. I was able to go off of work, but I was, through the compensation of everything else being sick, I was able to maintain 80% of my wage for up to 2 years.
Oh my God, I'm moving to Canada like right now.
Read the fine print.
That way out here.
Read the fine print whenever you sign any contracts with a place of employment, especially like even if you aren't chronically ill. Read the fine print when it comes to disability and benefits, because there is a box that if you check the box, you got 80%. If you hadn't checked the box, it defaulted to 50%, and there was no chance to review that or revise that. And I was smart enough to read through it, check the box. Things you get used to as you are a chronically ill person, reading fine print in hospitals, right, anywhere you go, medical documents. Read everything, because there's all kinds of stuff.
And it just so happens, my dad, and I'm sure you guys have a form of this out there. My dad helped create arbitration agreements, the ones that you sign before you, like, see a new doctor and everything. So I've always been taught to read the fine print and always know what I'm signing. And with my employer right now, I was getting 60% of my salary. However, that's only good for a year. So, in my year that I've been off of work, unfortunately, is coming to an end. So I'm kind of in that limbo of having to figure out what to do now. But like I said, I'm going to move to Canada now because your benefits are amazing and your healthcare is amazing, despite what you've had done with despite some of the treatment you have received. And it's just so sad that, again, this is what I love in a way, is that no matter where you are in the world, we can all connect not only what we go through being chronically ill, but unfortunately, even if we've had really horrible experiences, we can also kind of connect in that way. And it just goes to show that medicine is a science, but it seems like it's a one-size-fits-all type of science.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be that way, because, here you are again. It feels, and I'm so sorry, I don't mean to be offensive, and tell me if I am, or if I'm crossing the line. It's like you have 9 lives, because I feel like you've had this happen like 3 or 4 times now, where you've been so sick, and like it takes you to have to get to that point for them to like intervene.
Now that's the unfortunate part, but that's the humbling part of where I've learned to become so humble with a lot of things. It takes a lot to get me going. It's seeing how many chances I've had and how many times that it could have just been gone, and the fact that I'm here and I'm still here. I'm here for a reason. This is all extra. I shouldn't be here. So it's like, don't let things bother you. Don't let things get to you. This is what's meant to be, and this is what you want to do, and I'm very much do things my way.
Well, I feel that you are here, and this isn't spiritual or religious, but
and enjoy it.
If any, that you may believe in, I feel it was so you can reach out to somebody who might have a similar story to you wherever they are in the world. And you and I were talking about this offline before we started recording, that and for a while too, just like you, it was like, why me kind of thing, like why was I chosen to do this? But I really believe it's so we can help others. So we can get our story out there, and we can let others know that they're not alone. And you haven't mentioned it yet, but you have 2 young ones who have had to endure some of this with you.
Absolutely. It's like mostly, it's like right after the diabetes and everything else like that, it's like gone through. I had a son. It started biologics, and that was the hardest part for me. It was like going through the biologic stage too. Trying various biologics.
Which one
failed the biologics.
Which one did they start you on?
They started me on Remicade.
Wow, that's a strong one too. Wow. Yeah. Okay, but I didn't realize, because you were probably just so sick that would be nice.
I was on Remicade for about 4 months, and then like there was no improvement with Remicade.
And so then it was pretty sick from it, because I heard that that's a very strong
It was infusions in the morning, and then it was like sleep off the afternoon. And by the time the next day, you were groggy, but you were functional. But that whole day was just a write off. Like I said, it would work. It started to work for a little bit, so they kept me on for 4 months. But after that, it was like we are starting to see no improvement and starting to get symptoms again, where it's like passing blood and a lot of discomfort and pain. At this point, like I said, I'm still off of work. So I'd been about like 8 months at this point off of work. The next one, it was a Humira.
I've done that one. That was the first one I was ever started on.
But my GI, the new GI that they had was part of a research council with it. So they had put me on a trial. And they were doing a drug trial where it's like the medication was approved, but the dosages, they wanted to basically give me a double dose. And that was what the trial was. So it's like they had patients that would receive a placebo, patients that would receive the drug. And then they do the comparison. It was like a double dose. They wanted to increase the volume of Humira that was like done in the infusion. It was the needle. So they guarantee.
Part of a clinical trial. I want to be part of one. I've just never heard that they do a double dose. Maybe they do that for biologics. Interesting.
Yeah, and so I was on this trial for it. They guaranteed that I would receive the medication as part of the trial, because it's like I couldn't obviously get the placebo. If I got a placebo, there'd be no point in me doing it.
Right.
Yeah. So they tried me on that. I had been part of the trial for, I think it was 3 months. Same thing. There was no response to it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was only like Humira for, I think I want to say 4 to 6 months, because I didn't have any improvement. And at that time, I had only known that I had fibromyalgia and psoriatic arthritis. I didn't know I had any other issues at that point. So, and it was a good drug because it didn't hurt. And, I was really, and I had to administer it myself. But yeah, it didn't really do much for me.
Yeah. And then from there, it was onto Entyvio. It was like the third option. I tried Entyvio. Entyvio was the one that actually worked the best for me. I got about 5 months out of it.
It's funny you say that. That's my third option. If Skyrizi and Rinvoq don't work, I would have to try Entyvio next. But please continue.
Entyvio, best for reaction, easiest for infusion. I'd be able to drive myself to my appointment, get infused. I'd be able to drive myself home. I had no side effect to it. It was really good. It worked the best, but unfortunately through that, it was still having symptoms, still having problems with my UC. It was then time. It's like I'd been off work for so long. It was like kind of no improvement. The biologics weren't working. Had that hard conversation with the GI specialist, and it was the last option was finally to have surgery. And the surgery was obviously had to have my portion of my colon removed, end up with an ostomy bag. Like I said, 30 something, mid 30s. Not really, how I expected to end up or what to get out of life from there. But at the same point, it's like I can continue to suffer. I can continue to go through all this pain and agony, or I can just have a surgery and kind of that'll be it.
And for our listeners, there are multiple types of different types of ostomies. And even when I was a nursing assistant, I actually didn't even know that until I became chronically ill, that there were all these different, because I'm like, oh, okay, that person has an ileostomy, and that person has, this type of ostomy. I didn't realize there were just so many types. And so you're in your mid-30s, and if it's okay, if we back up just a little bit. So with your type 2 diabetes, I mean, it's such a specialized type of diabetes that is it ever going to be reversed, or because of the damage to your pancreas? It's just, so are you on insulin, or what are you on it?
I'm not on insulin. They have me on metformin, which regulates.
Another drug that I hated, but for different reasons. I gained a lot of weight from metformin, so that's not my favorite drug either. But for people like in your situation, I heard it can do wonders.
helps control the numbers for sure, and it's a combination of the metformin, and as of like a year ago I was put on Ozempic.
Oh, okay, okay.
So it's like I do weekly
For the
injections of
fad,
Ozempic.
for the celebrity fad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The weight loss drug.
Right. Okay, that's good. Okay.
So
Okay.
it's like that controls the diabetes. But yeah, going back to the point where it's like the surgical option, it was at that point, what do I do, right? And it's like I need to have some form of life back, and the life that I currently have, where it's taking the medication for diabetes, it's like going through all these biologicals, young family, everything else going on. It's like bills,
You have
obviously.
two kids at this point, right? Or
No, one. I had one at this point.
so how old was your son's the oldest, right?
Yeah. He's 3 at this point now, or
Oh,
two,
oh,
two turning 3 at this point, and that's where it's like I had finally just had the decision. It's like time's here. Like it's. I don't want to go through biologics. I don't want to have to go through 6 months of another drug being injected into me just to find out that it's not working. Because
right.
the fourth option they had for me was a sister drug to, I guess it would be like Humira. And it's like, obviously they know based off like what the Humira reaction was for me that this drug most
Right,
likely
the same
wouldn't. So
class. It's not going to work. I've been learning
yeah,
that too. As now I'm going on my fifth biologic. It's like, why do I want to try it if it's in the same class? It's like obviously,
yeah.
yeah. Like
So
let's cut the let's just skip the ahead. Let's just skip the line.
yeah, and like I said, at this point, being so sick as well, it's just like constantly being in the bathroom. Like we're not talking like constantly in the bathroom. I'm talking like
Like
35 to 40 times a day. Like if I had, like I said, going back, if I could talk to me before I was sick, I would have started taking university courses while I was in the bathroom, because I probably would have had like numerous degrees by the time it's all said and done. It's that much time. It's
Written like
bad.
20 best sellers. Yeah.
It's yeah, and it's like it was no life. It's no way to raise a child. It's like I don't want my son to see me. It's like he's starting to figure out. He wants to know where dad is. He goes to the bathroom. Oh, look, there's dad. Dad's in the bathroom as always, right? It's like missing out on so many things. So I made the choice to have the surgery, where it's the surgery was to remove my entire colon. 'Cause at this
Wow.
point, I had what they call pancolitis, which was the entire colon was affected. It had been so much scar tissue inside of it too, so much damage that it was like kind of like yeah.
Did they say
Um,
why that was, or was that just because the medications you were on just weren't working, and so
well, that was
in
it.
that
The
case the UC had progressed?
UC had progressed and it just kept spreading and multiplying. It had
Oh,
basically just infected the whole colon at this point. So
oh,
that was a difficult decision, especially coming up to like the date of the surgery. It was like you said, it was one of those moments where it's like, all right, going into this, I probably won't come out of it. Um, it's tough going into some of the expectation of that, right? Especially knowing it's like with kids. Uh, Made sure everything was all tied up at the end before I went in. It's just like, yeah, it's finally coming out of the surgery. I remember vividly waking up. It was quite the experience. Waking up, it was painful, but I was there. They medicated me right away.
different type of pain, because I've had surgeries like this where it's like you have something removed, so you're in pain from that, but then you're not in pain because the part that was causing your pain
Yeah,
is no longer there. Like it's kind of a weird mind
yeah.
trick,
It's
if
like
you will. But um, if it's okay, and this is your moment, so by no means am I here to take away from that. You had shared with me that what you just shared, you haven't shared with a lot of people.
no,
I
no.
really
It's
want to highlight that because I think that's
yeah,
super important. I really respect you so much more than I already did. I'm just extremely inspired by everything you're sharing with me because again you're so humble, and like you and I have had some really like interesting like deep conversations about the commonalities of everything that we've
yeah,
experienced, but you haven't shared some of this with me, and I really want to highlight how brave it is for you to share what you're sharing. And
It's
also, again, for people to realize like it's okay to feel this way.
yeah.
I want to know what made you feel like you weren't going to come out of this surgery, but also I want people to realize, as you had shared with me, that you said that you didn't think you were going to come out of this surgery and you haven't shared that with anybody. So I want to give
No.
you that moment.
The surgery itself was 5 hours. It was just like expected to be 5 hours, right? Because it's like they're removing a large organ out of your body that's
Right.
not supposed to be removed.
Right.
Being so sick for so long too, and it's like having a weakened immune system from biologics and everything else that I had been on. Being so susceptible to everything, right? It's like going under the knife for that long and having surgery for that long, having your body maybe 60% of what it should be. It's to have that kind of surgery or that length of a surgery not being 100%. It's got a lot of challenges.
A lot of risk. Yeah.
Even explained to me by the surgeon that there's a lot of potential for stuff to happen, especially with the anesthetic. Everything else, like potential messing around in there, lots of other stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
Not knowing how bad it is until they get in there, right? And it's kind of like, okay. My surgery ended up being 7 hours. So
Did they
it
find
was,
something they weren't expecting, or?
they had some complications halfway through, I guess, and they couldn't even really explain it, but either way, they got it out. And were able to have everything. The ostomy, they go through everything on your body where you want it prior to having the surgery. You have to do a
Right, where
consult
they're
4 days
basically
before.
rewiring you, basically.
Yeah, so it's like you having the ileostomy. It was up on the one side right at the end where they pull out the small intestine. But you end up with a black dot, and that black dot is where your ileostomy is going to be, and that's going to be your new thing for your bag and accessories.
Accessories, love it.
And
Sorry, go
going
ahead.
through it, it's like after the surgery, looking down at my stomach finally, it's like you could see the black dot of where it was supposed to be, and it wasn't where it was supposed to be. So, and like obviously they had run into some problems where it's like where it was supposed to be, they couldn't end up pulling stuff down and getting it there. There was like some muscle
Okay.
issues. They had found a hernia inside me as well while they were doing the surgery, so it was kind of like one of those bonus 2-for-1s.
I
Repaired the
always
hernia
call it
while
they
they were in
find
there.
a treasure, and I'm like, because every surgery I've ever had, they always find something additional. I'm like, okay, we'll have fun with your treasure hunt. Let me know what you find on the other side.
End up with like the 2-for-1 surgery
Right,
kind of
exactly.
go in there for one thing, they found something, fixed it, it's like cool. But yeah, it was surreal coming out of it, and like I said, going through it was a very tough learning curve for me.
Oh, I bet, because it's now, because you have to meet, at least out here we call it, you have to meet with a wound nurse,
Yep,
and you
we
have
have
to
the
be taught
ostomy nurse.
how to empty and change your bag and everything.
Like I said, this me being in my 30s ended up with an ostomy bag. They offer me like support pamphlets and stuff like that, and it's just like cool. You see like the 89-year-old. Not there's nothing wrong with 89-year-olds or anybody with age or anything, but it's mostly when you see ostomy stuff, it's referred to elderly or senior citizens that end up having them, and it's the huge stigma that they stink and that they're gross and they're like.
Right.
Yeah. I can tell you one thing with ostomies: if it smells, there's something wrong. It's either the product that they're using has failed,
Exactly.
or the person who has it is really not taking care of it.
Right. Yeah. So
It's
exactly. Yeah.
yeah, it's one of two things. It's either a hygiene issue or it's a product failure.
Exactly. Yeah.
And given there's so many products available for ostomies, so many different corporations and companies that have products available to you, and there's no right product or wrong product. It's what works best for your body and what's most comfortable. It's a huge learning curve, and it's very frustrating at first because you end up dealing with like leaks, and it's like
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, having to sleep on your back. You can't sleep on your stomach. And I was a big stomach sleeper beforehand,
And it
right?
hurts
So,
at first too, right?
yeah,
Because like
a
now
lot
you
of
have
discomfort
part of your organs are kind of they're not
hanging out of
floating
you.
out, but you have
No,
this
they are.
in a sense with
Yeah,
part of your, with an organ kind of,
yeah.
urine out a little bit.
But it's going through that. Hardest part is for me going back to work, like you said. You mentioned that I had a great employer and they were accommodating at first. Um, Having what I had, they couldn't give me my medical at first because they weren't sure what to do or what to expect out of me. So the company wouldn't sign off on my medical at first, so they didn't want me to be in like that safety critical, safety sensitive position. I had returned back to work after like my recovery of like 7 months. So at this point, it had like just been touch over 2 years that I had been off work. So
Wow.
it was challenged to come back, and it's like I remember being back for about 3 weeks, and the general manager of our terminal had come into my office. He's like, we need to chat. Come with me, and brought me into a boardroom, and there's a lady had flown in from Edmonton from HR, and I kind of just like, why is she here? And then sat down, and I was
Right.
I was given a layoff notice with a severance package. So at this point, I had been with that company for 15 years. Yeah, 15 years.
Allowed to do that because out here that's wrongful termination.
They didn't terminate me. They laid me off and then offered me a
But
severance
still,
package.
why were they laying you off? Because I mean, you were on medical leave. That's still wrongful. You're still being terminated in some. At least out here, that's what that would be considered.
And corporations, being as smart as they are, is they're obligated to pay me out a certain amount of money, which is like a percentage of my salary. They gave
That was
me.
still nothing, right? They still just
No,
offered you.
it was pretty significant,
Oh,
and
okay.
they had actually given me like $3,200 more than what they were obligated.
Oh, okay.
And
All right. Then I'll take back what I said, but still,
speaking
it's
with
not okay that they did what they did. But
no,
okay,
absolutely. I had went to a lawyer and
okay.
spoke with the lawyer, and the lawyer had gone through the letter that they had given me and looked at like the check that they had cut me and went through like all the things. They gave you $3,200 more than what they were obligated. And it's like the reason why corporations do that is because if you try to take them for a wrongful dismissal at any point, that they can say that they overcompensated you.
Oh, yes.
And
So
and
it
they
was
and
a
they
wrongful dismissal. Okay, so I was
they
right.
they come out looking better because they offered you more compensation than what they should have. And he's like, the amount of money that you're going to pay me to take them. He's like, just take the money. He's like, take the money and go. As hard as it is to hear that, he's like, it's not worth the fight for you legally or financially.
Well, and the stress, and you're dealing
Yeah,
with this new lifestyle.
that was it.
You have to get used to.
So it's like, yeah. Fortunately, with the railway industry, it's once you get a qualification, you have a qualification.
That's good.
There's more than one company out there. There's more than one railway out there.
Yeah,
More so in the U.S. I know there's a lot of guys in the U.S.
yeah,
and
because
women in the
you have
U.S. that
worked a
work
little
that.
bit out here, so you know that a little bit more than I do.
Yeah,
But I was gonna say I know we have quite a few unions out here. I just don't know exactly how it works necessarily. But
for railways in the U.S., I know it's like by the time you start with one, by the time you retire, you've probably worked for 3 or 4 different railways. You kind of
okay,
bounce around a lot. You have the freedom to bounce around a lot.
gotcha.
For me, like I said, maintaining my qualification and having the skill set that I had, and finally being able to get my medical and be approved to go to work and everything else like that, I was fortunate to have landed on my feet and knew people that I had worked with at the railway I'd worked at previously, and ended up landing the job that I have now. I had to go work up in northern Canada for a while to get some seniority, but to be able to come home and finally do what I do now, it's pretty amazing. I've got a really good schedule. I've got a really good work-life balance.
Yeah, you were telling me about that
Yeah,
offline, and then you were showing me the picture because I've never seen like what the engineer car looks like, and it's.
yeah,
I mean, I'm not gonna say it's like so spacious, but it's more spacious than what I was thinking.
yeah,
Because you and I were talking about before your ostomy, like how were you able to go to the bathroom while trying to be, an
yeah,
engineer for a locomotive? Like, it's hard.
yeah. Well, that's it. There's two of us, so we're able to switch off and take over for each other and stuff like that. Give each other
But
bathroom breaks.
how did your it's not a pilot, co-engineer, like how, or
Yeah.
what's the proper terminology? Is it co-engineer?
We have an in-charge locomotive engineer, and then there's a controlling engineer, and it's like, so the controlling engineer is the one actually driving. The in-charge is the one that sits off to the side, and he deals with like the service manager on board the train with all the passengers and does all the groundwork and stuff.
So
yeah.
How did your counterpart, though, before your ostomy? Sorry, how did
Fortunately,
like deal with you having to use the restroom so often?
he's perfectly fine with it. He's good with it now. Like I said, I've known him since high school, so it's like one of my good
even
friends.
With your ostomy, because you have to change it pretty frequently, right?
For me, I've got a drainable one, so it's like it's a matter of just going. Once it fills up, I can go to the bathroom and drain it. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's like my changes. I usually go no more than like 2 days with one. Just try to like change it every day or every other day, so it's pretty good. Like I said, they can go up to like 4 days, but I don't want to chance it. Just kind of change it, keep it clean, keep it sanitary, make sure everything's taken care of.
If I were in your shoes, I'd be one of those that it's like I'd rather just change it as often as I can because I just want to keep it, clean and neat and just
exactly
kind of thing. And what's cool is, and I haven't told you this, there's a lot of people I'm finding on Instagram who also have different ostomy bags, and there's like a whole line, and maybe this is a more feminine thing. But they're making like there's somebody, and I'm trying to get her on my podcast, and I can't. And if you're listening, I'm so sorry if I'm blanking on your Instagram handle. But she calls it ostomy lingerie, where it's kind of just like like kind of a mesh or a lace like cover for the ostomy bag, just to make it look more pretty. And then there's other people coming out with lines of kind of like clothing like for their ostomy bags, just to make themselves look feel a little bit more confident in it, because I'm sure
there's a lot. There's Ostomy. I know they make support garments for women, and they make support garments and belts and stuff like that for men.
Oh, cool.
As well, that are like help keep things tight.
If you guys want to come on here, or you should be their ambassador, something like that.
And that's what I've seen, and they offer is like support system, so it's like you're able to go swimming and stuff like that, because it's a bag, right? Obviously, like it keeps it tight to the body and stuff. It's I'm not sure if it's 100% waterproof or not, but it keeps things to a point where you're able to enjoy things like swimming. I found a company out of Australia. It's Ostomate Active.
I've seen a lot in Australia. They're like huge on like how they like really support their ostomy accessories out there. I don't know if it's like larger, like colitis is larger there or something, but I've noticed in Australia they know what's happening. They've got it down there.
Yeah, and like showering every day, obviously it's a challenge with a bag. You have a bag attached to you, and it's like getting wet, and then you have to dry it. I found this Ostomate Active. They make an actual like shower bag. It's a shower cover that you could put over top of your ostomy bag that allows everything, and it's fully waterproof. So it's like in the morning,
come offline and come off with an idea that we're gonna go global with.
There's so many things available to make things so much easier. Having to end up with an ostomy isn't the end of the world. Like I said, for me, having the ostomy or having to choose the life that I had previous to this, by all means, like the one thing I have, it's like if I had had the option to have done this earlier, I would have. It's like trying the biologics, having the surgery to come out of it. It's got its challenges at first. It's frustrating at first, but perseverance through the beginning stages and early learning curve of it, coming out of it at the end of it, it's changed my life for the better. I'm able to live, like I said, I've got another child. I've got a successful career that's coming out of everything, and things are looking up now. And it's like you go through so much to finally be where you are and be comfortable. It's good.
And how do your kids Like when you're having like a flare day, what's their level of understanding that like daddy's not feeling well? Like what do
My
they?
son more so is able to pick up on it. It's like I really don't even have to say anything. He's just kind of like, It's like, you're not feeling good today, are you, Dad? I'm like, nah. It's more of like a slower moving day. It's like still
Got
want
it.
to do stuff with him and keep active, but he's able to, I guess, take care of himself or his own needs. Where he's not, I
Gotcha.
want to go do this, I want to go do that. It's kind of like hey, I'm going to go do, I'll play on my Switch or something like that for the day instead of us
Gotcha.
going out
Yeah. So
somewhere,
he'll
right?
do like a low key day with you kind of thing.
Yeah. Or
Got it.
which is amazing to see that a child is fully capable of like understanding what's going on and able to
Yeah.
kind of like take care of himself, or like I said, with his sister, he's able to keep his sister busy or play with his sister. Just kind of give me the break to sit on the couch and not have to like get up and do stuff.
What's the age range between them?
I was on the biologics and everything else for a while, right? And it's like not knowing what any long term effects could have on another child, right? So it's like kind of held off for a long time. So there's a 5 year span
Oh,
between.
okay, got it. Right, right,
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
yeah. It's
that's
like wait till I was like off medications and everything else
sure.
before anything else was like potentially. It's like neither of them, neither of them were like really planned, but they kind of were. So it was a sense where it's like, yeah,
Right. Oh, that's awesome. And like you and I were talking about this a little bit offline too, and you're like it's kind of a humbling experience for your children because they're
yeah,
so young and they have a parent who is sick.
yeah.
And to learn that at a young age, it really will help shape their understanding and
Oh,
acceptance
absolutely.
as they grow older. And that's
Yeah,
really something to take into consideration. And I think that's just a really amazing way to look at it.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I
It's such a crazy thing to have to go through. Like I said, anybody that's got like any form of chronic pain, discomfort, having to deal with the medical system constantly on a daily. And it's like, I know in Canada, the way that our system works, it's still difficult to maintain appointments. It's exhausting mentally and physically to keep track of appointments, to make appointments, and
yes.
have doctors cancel appointments and then have to reschedule appointments. And it's like appointments on top of appointments. It's like you're having a low energy day where you don't have the energy to get out of bed, let alone having to go to 4 different appointments.
Yeah, and
It's just like, ooh, it's so much. It's so much on top of the illness itself.
that's a stigma too that I hope over time us as a community can destigmatize because a lot of people are like, oh well, you're ill, so you just get to watch Netflix all day on the couch, and it's like that couldn't be further from the truth. Like leading up to my hospitalization, I was on the phone for 5 hours throughout the day trying to get one of my medications all figured out, and make sure that you guys had all the documentation that you said you had, but yet you didn't because you still haven't delivered my medication. Like, so it's like, it's not just relaxing. Yes,
No,
we do have days where that is all we do, but that's so we can function. That's so we can go enjoy the wedding you're having this weekend, or we can go enjoy the vacation we've been like looking for, and or it's so we can be a functional employee at our job if we're so lucky to be able to still be able to physically have a job, because there are those of us out there that aren't. And so I'm hoping like over time that we can destigmatize that. And it's just interesting again what you're saying about your healthcare system because I've visited parts of Canada, and my mom had to go to urgent care when we were on vacation there, and it was and they just treated her so well, and it was way different, and she was seen so quickly, like way different than what we would have experienced here in the US. So it's so crazy for me to hear that there's still these discrepancies that we deal with out here too, and it's just crazy. And then you and I were talking that out here we have medical supply delivery systems where you were saying no, you have to go and pick up your ostomy
yep,
supplies, and that's just another stressor that you have to deal with.
In the province where I live, we have an ostomy program where I'm able to place an order for my supplies and they ship them to the warehouse and I go pick them up from the warehouse. Other provinces in Canada I know are different, where ostomates have to purchase their products off the
Right.
shelf and they can pick them up at like a pharmacy
Right.
and they pay for them out of pocket and get reimbursed. And like I said, that's all within one country. There's like it's provincial. It depends what your province offers. Like I said, fortunately for me, being in Manitoba, where I am now, is we do have a really good ostomy program where it's
That's
you
good.
call in. It doesn't cost me any money out of pocket. It's all covered, and that's a huge thing. Like I said, these ostomy products, I know there's some bills like for a box of 10 bags that last you maybe a month. You're looking at like $250, $300.
Right. Right.
Like I said, if you're not able to work, and that's a huge chunk of money that you have to put out front, and then yes, you do get reimbursed, but the reimbursement usually takes weeks, if not months, to get back.
And see, that's crazy because we wouldn't. If you have to pay out of pocket, you have to pay out of pocket. We don't get reimbursed.
That's
However, there are insurance companies, a lot of them do cover ostomy supplies. I don't know it to a T because I wasn't able to help in that. That would normally be a nurse case manager that would help with that. But I do know that there are medical supplies that are covered, and I believe that would be one of them that are covered. But if
yeah,
you do have to pay out of pocket, you're the sayonara to that money. Like you, so it's just so interesting to me to see how the various like health systems in different parts of the world work. And it's like
yeah,
it's treating the same thing, yet it's completely different.
yeah. Our program would only cover like a portion of products or a certain amount of products. There's like support rings that I get that go around the bag. The ones that they offered, it's through the program. My skin reacts to the adhesive on it, so I get a bad reaction, end up with a
I
rash.
was
It's
gonna
really
ask
uncomfortable.
about that. Yeah.
So I have to use another product, and that product comes out of Florida. I'm able to order it through a medical supply store. I have to pay for that out of pocket because I won't get reimbursement on that because it's considered a luxury item.
Even though you're allergic to the one.
It doesn't matter because they offer that, and that's what they offer. And since it's not
Frustrates
what they offer, I'm
so
choosing to find something
much.
else.
Oh my gosh. I
And it's like,
just
yeah, requiring a medical appliance is sure a luxury. So
that and this is also coming on the heels of, well, before I was diagnosed with Crohn's, um, my insurance company wanted to put me back on a biologic that I had an allergic reaction to. And like my rheumatologist had to like fight for like 4 weeks, like saying, are you like, effing kidding me? Like she had an allergic reaction. Why all of a sudden are you wanting to like put her back on this thing? So that's why I'm like rolling my eyes. I'm just like, oh my gosh. And so that's nuts that you have to, and see, again, this is things that people don't think about. It's just like you need this adhesive and you're allergic to the one that's available and yet you have to pay out of pocket. And it's just crazy. It just boggles my mind. So you and I will have to brainstorm offline on how we can make this better. So yeah.
yeah, there needs to be like some sort of global program.
Exactly. Let's get on it right now. We're gonna
Yeah.
we're gonna figure this out.
Well, it's like even like the UK. I know like overseas, the UK, there's different lines of products for ostomy. Like they have like different types of bags. They have a thing called Salts Healthcare, and they offer like white bags. They offer black bags. They have skin like nude color bags, like
Uh-huh.
different things here. Like North
Kind of
America,
like
we get
makes
our
how it like, yeah, how you can like match your color to your skin. Yeah.
North America. You get a clear bag, or you can
Right.
get like the nude bag. Um, there's no North American manufacturer, I guess, that like offers different options, right? So it's like it'd be nice to have like the option to get like a pure black bag. It's like if you're going out somewhere and you're dressed up,
Right.
you're
Yeah.
wearing like a white colored shirt, or it's kind of like a transparent shirt,
Right.
right? To have something that like doesn't stick out like a sore thumb through something. It's
Right.
You're able to kind of like accessorize it in a way. It's like I'm sure you could put covers
Yeah.
over like the clear bags. Like I said, it's a lot of the
I've
default for a
noticed that
lot
a
of
lot
like
of people are coming out with that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
A lot of the manufacturers, they're like basic bag type, which is like the one that's most likely to be covered by like any like programs, is like the clear transparent bag, which you go to the bathroom and it's full of whatever you expel and it's transparent. You kind of don't want that visible, right? So it's like,
Of course.
yeah.
And this is a lifelong thing, so it's like, we gotta make it where it works for you. And I was gonna ask if you're comfortable doing so. I'm sure now that you've had it for some time, your level of confidence has changed, but I mean, what was it like for you back to back knowing that you have a form of type 2 diabetes that is most likely not reversible because of the damage that it's done to your pancreas? Now you have an ostomy that also is not reversible, because for some people, for our viewers and listeners out there, there are some ostomies that are reversible, but it just really depends on what type you have. So you have that. And now this is your new lifestyle where you have this permanent bag that you have to have. And now you have to learn how to clean it, how to empty it, how to manage it. Like, I mean, what was that like for you? Because I can't even imagine what. And then also, again, I really want to again thank you for being so vulnerable and transparent, and let you know how brave I think you are for saying that I didn't think I was going to come out of this surgery. So back to back, you had like these three major things happen in such a short amount of time, and you had your kids or your son at the time to think about. I mean, like, what was going on for you emotionally and everything like that?
A lot.
I bet.
A lot of overwhelming.
And share only what you're feeling comfortable with. I don't want you to feel pressured by any means, but
I think the most important thing out of all of it is like experience all of it, going through everything that everyone has to go through. I know it really took its toll on the relationship that I had with my kid's mom. That dissolved itself, unfortunately. So it's like going through that process. It was really difficult after all of it too. Mental health is a very, very, very important part, especially being like chronically ill, going through it. There's a lot of self-doubt, I had a tendency to blame myself for a lot of it and feel like super self-conscious, and it's like, it really takes its toll on you mentally. Definitely reach out and get help, like 100%. Take advantage of what's available to you. It's okay to talk to somebody about what's going on. It's normal. It's extremely encouraged to do so. It's benefited me greatly from it, especially dealing with all of what life's thrown at me now. Just helps you process and sort out feelings and thoughts, right, and get you back on track to where you should be and need to be, right. And it's like, have that reassurance and that support structure. But definitely, like I said, it can be extremely overwhelming, and really can take a toll on everybody, like home life, family life, work life, right. It's you go through a lot of thoughts and feelings. It's like job limitations. Are you able to maintain what you're maintaining? Are you able to continue with what you're continuing, right? It's I think taking care of yourself mentally is the most important part out of all of it. Physically, yeah, there's a lot of things that I go through, and it's like pain wise, everything else. But I think the hardest thing that I had to go through with everything was like the own mental sabotage and the own like mental thought. It's like trying to get through things in your own head and see things the way that you need to see things, and kind of like learn to be kind to yourself.
Right.
Yeah, and like I said, whether it's whatever the illness is, it's like having a form of chronic illness and going through constant amounts of pain. The hardest part is it's how are you doing today? Oh, I'm good. It's a generic response. I'll tell everybody I'm good. I could be like doubled over in pain internally, but you never know it on the outside.
I always struggle with that too. And sorry, You're pulling out my heartstrings right now.
I'm sorry.
No. It's in a good way, because some of the things
Yeah.
you're mentioning, it's like I'm dealing with that too. But
Yeah.
what I was going to say is, when people ask me, it's always like, okay, how honest should I be with how I'm
Oh,
feeling?
that's it. But
And
you doubt it, right? And you
like,
question it.
I'll just come up with a generic response like, I'm surviving. I mean, because it's true.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what else to say after that, but yeah.
Well, it also, for me, depends who's asking, right? Like, is
Exactly. Same. Yeah.
who are you talking to? Is this a safe person that I can open up to and be vulnerable to, right? It's
Right.
how much do you really want to divulge? Like, walking into work, everyone's like, I see, there's probably like 50, 60
Right.
people there that I see when I walk into work. Oh, hey, how's it going? It's like high fives for everybody. It's good.
Right.
Everything's great. And in the meantime, then my friend Matt that I work with regularly, he's like, how are things really going? It's like, well, if you want to know, and kind of like break down and let him know what's going on. It's like, oh, okay. But it's like,
Right.
some people fake illnesses to get out of things. When it's like, we fake not having illnesses
Right.
to
You're
kind of go
faking
through
well.
things,
You're
right?
faking well, and
That's it. No,
I
that's
told right. I told you I had been bullied, and I was a part of an organization that they thought I was faking being sick to get out of things. And yet, at that point, this is when all my diagnoses, like, I had a fever of 104.6. I was in the hospital. I had a few, lymph nodes that were extremely inflamed. So they thought I might have lymphoma. I mean, these were actual cancer scares, and I was being told that I was making it up and that I was trying to garner sympathy and stuff like that. But the thing that you said that like really got me, and I'm so sorry, this is so crazy, I hate crying, not that there's anything wrong with it, but
no, it's needed.
is the self-sabotage,
Yeah,
and just the why me, and what did I do to deserve this, and
yeah,
there must have been something that I did, to um, to make this happen to me. And
yeah.
but being a social worker, but also being a chronic illness warrior, please reach out for help, everyone.
Oh,
There is nothing wrong
100%.
with saying that you're not doing okay, and it's better to admit that you're not doing okay. And if you don't have a good support system, reach out to somebody who can be that
Yeah,
support system. Sometimes a total stranger, it's easier to reach out. I mean, like Andrew and I, we were total strangers, yet we had this commonality, and like, look at where we are now. I mean, and so it's just things like that. Like, and I think that's what's really cool about a chronic illness community too, is that we all have this commonality, but we can all relate without having to say much. Like,
no,
we can say, you
that's
know what, I'm having a bad day. And like, we can be like, okay, hey, you want to talk about it? But because we already know what that entails to an extent. And then it's just very refreshing, and like that weight gets lifted off, because you were mentioning how unfortunately your relationship dissolved, due
yeah,
to your chronic illness. And, you know, I'm kind of having some similar issues
yeah,
in that regard right now too, and I've lost friends as well, and I have family members who have told me, oh well, but this person's sicker than you are. And it's like, I didn't realize there was a competition going on, because if there was, I didn't enter it, and I don't want to, because I'm
no,
just telling you what I'm going through. And so
yeah,
sorry, I gotta get another Kleenex here. So it's tough, it sucks, it's
yeah,
hard.
yeah.
But yeah.
Like I said, there's
That's why this is crazy, and I'm sorry. This is just my way when I get emotional. I'm like, wow, didn't expect to break down like this. But
like I
yeah,
said, it's part of it, and I think that's like an underlying thing. And I'm sure you can ask anybody with a chronic illness and similar thoughts have gone through all of our heads at some point, where it's challenging, and it's to be able to break down that stigma. It's okay to be not okay. We take care of ourselves physically. we make people aware of when things aren't right physically, and it's like mentally it should be no different. It's when something's not right, and it's okay to ask for help. It's
Right.
especially going through everything that like I've been through. It's been so overwhelming. It's been so much, and like again, this is something that I don't share with anybody. It's I very much bottle this up and keep this to myself a lot of the times. But it's okay to be not okay. But the most importantly is like no matter where you are, there's always like large support networks and groups. Reach out for help. Oh, absolutely, reach out for help. It's okay. Sometimes it's just that extra voice to listen to what you've been through, to reassure you that what you've been through is okay, and that's it.
Yeah, a
Yeah,
1000%. And this being chronically ill is isolating in itself, especially
yeah,
like me. And I thankfully have such a great family, but no one else in my family has these issues, so they can't possibly fully understand what I'm going through. Just like with your
yeah,
family, your grandmother possibly had what you had, but your
yeah,
parents don't have this. Your sister doesn't have it, so
no,
they understand what you have, but to an extent, and they
yeah,
so that's isolating. Then when you have doctors that, uh, you know, uh, again medically gaslight you, which that was kind of our theme of today. That's isolating, and it's like, why don't you believe me? This isn't anxiety. I know, like, I don't feel well. I know something does not feel right, and that's why I'm always telling people, when I was working as a social worker before, I went on medical leave, and I will do this every day, and I do this within our community too. Know your body, know yourself, advocate for yourself, because if
yeah,
you cannot advocate for yourself, how is somebody else going to advocate for yourself? Being a social worker, I am an advocate, but I can only advocate for you so much. If you don't know the medications you're on, how am I going to know what medications you're on and why you're taking them, and why
yeah,
they're not working, why you're presenting, with I'm only saying this because I work in the ER, why you're presenting with a certain, type of mood or psychosis. How would I know what you're taking? Things like that. For me, I know my medications and I know what side effects I'm supposed to feel and not. And I knew right away that this was a prednisone issue. And it took 2 weeks finally for all of my doctors to finally be in agreement that, yeah, she did have some prednisone um, induced psychomotor agitation. It was a contributing factor to the type of migraine I had, but it wasn't the main thing. And again, to our listeners and viewers, I forgot to mention this at the very beginning. The reason why there's been a 2-3 week lapse in between podcast episodes is due to my hospitalization and me regaining my speech and everything. And then I just really wanted to also find the perfect guest, which is Andrew, to be
thank
able
you.
to talk about an experience like this. Um, so yeah, and again, it gets isolating too when these things also make different relationships dissolve. It makes it really hard, because here we are trying to make the best of our situation. And it's funny, I feel there's just so many people in our community that we've all made the choice that we want to make the best of the hand that we've been dealt, and we have a positive attitude. And like you said, we fake being well. We don't fake being ill like a lot of people do. Like, we don't get out of stuff because we're trying to like be like, oh, you know what, I have a cold today, so, and because I didn't want to see that person. It's like, no, I literally can't get out of bed. Like, even breathing and thinking hurts. Like, I need to be in a dark room with no stimulus, because yeah, it's gonna set me off. And so again, it's just a crazy process. But like you said, there is nothing wrong with asking for help. And
No,
are
not at all.
there any things for your province, or anything, like any shout outs to like some great resources that you'd like to call attention to, because maybe somebody who's in your province might find it really helpful? Is there a resource that's really helpful for you at all?
I found it like locally through the city. It was like a group. It's called a Hope Group, and they offer like counselors and stuff like that.
And
They
this is
offer,
Manitoba, you said?
yeah, like Canada wide. I'm sure there's lots of programs. It's like even through the U.S. I'm sure there's like a quick Google search for anything within your area. Like there's lots of free resources available to everybody. There's national hotlines. There's always somebody that's willing to help you get the help
Right.
that you need.
Right.
It's just a matter of finding the right fit for you as well.
Yeah, and and I love that
Yeah,
you brought that up. That's definitely true. And it's
yeah,
okay that when you reach out for help, if that person, it doesn't feel like this wasn't what you were looking for, that doesn't mean you're a lost cause. It just means you
no,
guys just didn't fit.
yeah.
Like it was a personality issue or just
That's it. Like I said, don't stop trying. There's always somebody that will be the right fit, and once you find that person that's the right fit for what you need, it would
right.
be leaps and bounds for
Right.
improvement for yourself, right? And it's building your confidence back up and getting you back to where you should be.
Right. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I was gonna ask you. Oh, so like out here in the U.S., we have like the National like Colitis and Crohn's Foundation. Do you have something like that?
Yeah,
Are they in Canada or is it
I think
provincial or?
there's Crohn's and Colitis Foundation.
Okay,
Crohn's and Colitis Foundation, I know they have a UK branch. I'm pretty sure they've got a Canadian branch. They've got an American branch as well.
okay,
I'm
like
sure there's
like
Crohn's
universally,
Colitis
like
Foundations like universally like everywhere.
I'm so sorry you broke out there. What was that?
Like I said, I'm sure the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation has branches like worldwide. Lots of resources available. Like I said, best thing you can do is even if you're listening and you know somebody with Crohn's, you know somebody with colitis, or you know somebody with an ostomy, and you don't experience it yourself. It's like do some research, do something. It's learn a little bit, right? It's like a little bit of education goes a long way, especially when it comes to being friends with people with problems.
Right,
And not saying that they're problems, but it's being empathetic towards what others are going through, and it's you're not looking for sympathy. None of us are looking for sympathy. We don't want people to feel bad for us. It's just basic understanding. It's just like, hey, like
right.
she
Like
says she's tired. She's obviously going through a lot. She's tired, and it's like knowing that it's normal for that person to be tired, right?
right,
And
and like
it's that kind of stuff.
yeah, like you were telling me, offline, like, of course, also your schedule is kind of not the normal schedule to like what other people's 9 to 5 schedules would be like, but you tell me like you purposely plan your day where there is a certain time frame where you have to take a nap.
Yep.
And and there's nothing wrong with that,
Yep.
and I used to be that way too. I am shocked that I have not like taken a nap in a very long time because there's a specific time every day I hit this fatigue wall and that is it. But it's okay if you have to, but
Yep.
that's a routine that works for you. And you were telling me like the other day how you were meal prepping for the whole week, so it's one less thing
Yep.
you have to worry about,
Yep.
And so, and like for me, I have some events coming up this week and I have a wedding to go to. And yeah, I'm a little nervous, because my Crohn's is still kind of flaring up because I'm still on our best friend prednisone and everything like that. And I'm like, okay, as long as I can identify where the bathrooms are, I should be okay. If I have to excuse myself, I have to excuse myself. Like what more can I do? I don't want to miss out on a wedding just because I might have to be in the bathroom. Like, it is what it is. Like this is, I'll figure it out. And I've come to terms with because I have so many issues that I might not be able to um, achieve remission. And, that's a whole mind trick too. And I'm not jumping to conclusions yet, but I'm just kind of prepping myself that that might be the case. And for you, so now that you have an ostomy, are you able, so is that considered remission or what is that considered, I
I
guess?
still have a portion of my colon left on like the bottom end, I guess. Like
Okay.
I don't physically ever have to sit on a toilet again.
Right.
I still, they call it a stump. So I still have like a stump, like a piece, and I do have active illness in that still. Like I do get colitis flares because that portion that's left still has disease. It still has flares. Obviously, it's not
Gotcha.
to
Okay.
the extent of what it was, and it is like really manageable. And it's
That's
it
good.
usually lasts like a few days, if anything. But like I said, as far as everything else, like I said, the diseased part of my body, the diseased part of the organ was removed. So everything else has been working really well. And it's like I said, it's
So
like a positive outcome.
how many years have you had your ostomy now?
I think it's five, six,
Have like a
2018.
celebration party or something like that.
Some people celebrate it.
Like celebration or whatever.
Some people have parties for it. Some people have birthdays for it. Some people name theirs. It's like me.
I
It's
think
just
that's
like,
funny. I love that. I think that's awesome. Like if I were to fall into that category, I'd do something like that. Like, it's making the best out of your situation, right? Like,
yeah. Be like I said, like I said, it's just thankful that things worked out the way they worked out. Like I said, it's just looking back to 17-year-old me and how sick I was. If you had asked me then where I would be when I'm 41 years old, if it was sitting here doing podcasts with like an ostomy and everything else, being where I am now, I'd said like, no, not at all. life was a lot different, and life's long-term goals were a lot different then from what they are now. And like I said, I'm really humbled and thankful to be where I am right now, and like comfortable where I am right now and how things are going. So
and I can tell, and I just got a few more questions, and I knew, and I warned you, Andrew, I'm like, I'm a talker, and you said you're a talker, and I'm like, I know this is going to be a very long episode, because I never stop talking.
it's okay.
Yeah, and we've got our coffee too. We both kind of had a morning where it was just like, oh my god, the struggle's been real this morning. And I didn't sleep well last night just because, again, Crohn's, and my body's like, we've got other plans for you. And you and I have talked about that too. Like, hey, how'd you sleep? And it just like, sometimes even that's the most supportive thing. Like whether you're chronically ill or not, like, hey, how'd you sleep? And like that's the thing that boggles my mind too, is like when people are like, oh yeah, I didn't sleep well last night, I'm so exhausted, and we'll say, well, yeah, I'm really fatigued, and they're like, oh yeah, I know what it's like, and it's like, no, this is a different type of fatigue. Like it's different. Yeah. Like we appreciate you trying to relate, but no, our fatigue versus your fatigue is a way different experience kind of thing. But I've noticed some people call themselves, in the colitis community, they call themselves an ostomate. Is that what you refer to yourself as, or do you know more about that, or like what's the terminology? I guess.
I guess the term ostomate would be like the ostomy. You have an ostomy, and that's it. Whether it be a colostomy, which that's the difference between a colostomy, is you still have a portion of your colon.
Right.
And it's a portion of your colon that comes out, so it's like your body still does function, your colon still does its job absorbing liquids and stuff. And then the ileostomy, which is up, you have no colon, it's just small intestine out of your body, so it's like your body doesn't absorb as much. But it's like, I guess any type of like ostomy that you have, you can be an ostomate, whether it be an ileostomy or a urostomy as well. Like I said, like that for like bladder issues and stuff like that. It's like there's so many different types of like ostomies, I guess, in that sense. So
right, but I've noticed that people will call themselves that have an ostomy, like they call themselves an ostomate, and so like because like how there's like it's like a friendship, like something, and I'm just
like a friend. It's like a group, right? It's like oh, you're an ostomate as well. It's like mates, ostomies.
Right.
Ostomates.
So how do you feel about that? Do you consider yourself in that group, or you don't really like?
I'd consider myself in that group. Like I said, if somebody else had it, and like I said, it's friends within the community, right? Keeping each other in the know. It's like, hey, I'm going through this right now. Have you experienced that at all? It's like, is this normal? Like, hey, it's like, do you get pains like this? Or it's like all kinds of like little things. It's being able to, like I said, reach out to each other. And it's like kind of advertising to yourself. It's like, hey,
Right.
I'm one of you. I'm one of you.
Right.
I'm one of you. It's like, you need something, let me know, right? Kind of thing.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right. Yeah. Um, and before we wrap up, Andrew, and again, I've always been inspired by you, like since you and I started talking and just realizing like we just had so much in common just with our views with being chronically ill and just our attitudes and just everything. And again, I just think it's so unique and cool that you're, a locomotive engineer and yet chronically ill, and you don't hear about that a lot. And so it just, again, thank you for being so vulnerable and just so willing to talk about your experiences and the fact that you have chosen this platform to share things that you haven't shared with others. Like, it really means a lot to me, and I want you to know like that I don't take that for granted as well, and that um that really means a lot to me, because I feel like we're connected just serendipitously. Is that a word? You know what I mean? I think
Mhm.
Sarah, it was due to serendipity that this was meant to happen somehow,
Yeah.
that we were able to connect, like you said, even though your story and your journey has had a lot of heartache, there's a lot of good that's come out of it too.
Yeah.
And you're able to use this as a platform to reach out to other people.
Yeah.
And so I
Absolutely.
want to thank you so much for agreeing to do this, and to also, and I know we were supposed to have you on an episode a few weeks ago, and then life happened. And,
Yeah.
as I told you, there was never an expiration date for when you could come back on. And again, after what I went through, I couldn't think of a more perfect person to talk about all of this with. But is there anything for people in the UC Crohn's community, or just the community in general, that you want to say? Is there any other platforms that people can follow you on that you want people to be directed to? Like, what closing words would you like to, I guess, use?
I think the ultimate message is it's like, whether you've had it for a long time or you're just being recently diagnosed with something, it's not over. It's not over. It's challenging and it's difficult, but it's not over. It's worth the fight. It's worth the exploration of various options available to you. Yeah, it's what you make of it. Be positive. Try and maintain positivity throughout it. Yeah, I think that's about it. And it's, like I said, it's the best thing is as much as physically as it really impacts us, it impacts us all mentally. And the biggest thing that I could take out of everything is the mental health side of it. Is take care of yourself, be kind to yourself, and give yourself what you need when you need it, and don't hesitate, don't second guess it. Like I said, it's a journey. It's your journey. But don't give up the fight for anything. It's totally worth it. It will get better. It can only get so bad before it gets good again. So that was the words of wisdom from my father. It can only get so bad before it gets good again. So you just gotta ride the wave, kind of wait for it to hit its low, and then it'll get better. So it's like, as low as it can go, it will get better. Just keep going.
Sure, yeah, like, I mean, you
But yeah,
hit rock bottom, you can only go up, right?
exactly. Like I said, it's as difficult as a lot of the diagnosis is and a lot of the stuff is. It's do what you can, do the best you can every day, and just be kind to yourself and take care of yourself.
Yeah, and again, it is
And it's
a
okay to, like,
saying. I'm
yeah,
sorry, was that? Go ahead.
and it's okay to explore different options for yourself as well. Like I said, if you're not hearing what you need to hear from one doctor, it's okay to go to another doctor.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
okay to get a
I was
second opinion.
literally just going to say that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's okay to get that second opinion, third
Yes.
opinion if need be, right? It's it's yourself that you're taking care of. And like I said, if you
Yes.
are being gaslit by a medical professional, find another medical professional. That's going to give you the time. That's going to give you what you need.
Yes.
That's the other thing. It's said 17-year-old me, if I had gone to another doctor, it could have been caught a lot earlier than it was, and it probably wouldn't have been as severe as it was. So it's, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say the exact same thing.
Yeah.
In society, and again, it seems like no matter where you are geographically in the world, we've been taught that with the medical community, and I respect the medical community.
Absolutely.
Let's get that straight, and I know Andrew does too, and all of us do, because obviously we would be a lot sicker without the medical community. But we have been taught that their word is the final word, no matter what, even if it doesn't make sense. So, oh, you need your arm taken off? Like, okay, sure. Like, I mean, like, well, why? Like, you need to, it needs to make sense to you. Because I've gone to countless doctors where the treatment options do not make sense to me. With my most recent hospitalization, they were going to just discharge me, and yet there wasn't really a plan. And I said, no, 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 no. I know that this doesn't make sense, and I do not feel comfortable going home until it does make sense. So I want, if possible, to get this done. I had pressed for like an MRI because I have a history due to some of my arthritic conditions of my nerves in my neck being pressed on by my discs. And sure enough, they found out that some of them have gotten a little worse and were pressing on my nerves, which were also causing the type of migraine that I had. And they also found out that I did have this psychomotor agitation due to the prednisone, which 2 days earlier I had said, I'm almost convinced this is a prednisone issue. So again, I also know the system because I work in the system, but you just have to push for it.
Yeah.
And it is frustrating when it's like you really wanted the answers, because you and I can probably also both relate to what it's like. We've waited such a long time to meet with that doctor, and then they spend 2 minutes with you, and your lab work is kind of wonky, but they don't really tell you why. Or, oh yeah, you're normal, but it's like, wait a second. My white blood cells and my SED rate and my C-reactive are like way, like, don't make sense, and I know my trends, and and yet they're not going to take the time to talk to you. So it's frustrating when you do have to find a new provider, but it's worth it, and you just need to continue to advocate for yourself. And I know it's exhausting. It's exhausting for us to live daily with the hand we've been dealt, but it'll be worth it in the end. Like you said, Andrew, like, look at everything you went through, and you're kind of on the other side of it right now. And, you're going to have bad days, that, because, you're not completely in remission and may never fully be. And that's okay too. But like you said, it's been a learning experience. And unfortunately, we had to go through hell to learn all of that, but worth it.
Yeah. If I can help somebody learn something today without having to experience it, makes me feel so much better. I want people to know things now that I learned the hard way, because I don't want other people to have to learn the hard way.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. It's like I said, that's it. Like I said, advocate for yourself, do the best. Like anybody in the medical field, they put in a lot of time. They put in a lot of effort for themselves to be where they are in that medical profession. It costs them lots of money to be in there. Like I said, they take their job seriously, and they wouldn't get into it if they didn't mean it. But like I said, different doctors in different areas of specialties, they practice in different ways. And like I said, different doctors are capable of diagnosing and seeing different things, and it's not based on the individual, it's based on their education. And if they're not educated in a way, or to a certain point, right, where they're able to pick up things, and they don't have a network around them yet, as they're a newer doctor in a sense, right, it's like they may not be able to give you the diagnosis that you need. So it's seek others' advice, right? Because you might hit a doctor where they've got a network of friends that are also doctors. Said, hey, you know what? I don't know anything about this, but my friend here specialized in this, and he might be able to help you, and then refer you to that doctor, right? 100%. They can help get you to where you need to be. And that's the importance of, like I said, if you don't hear what you need from one doctor, it's go to another one. Go to another one, get a second opinion. That second opinion won't hurt.
Yeah, you'll only gain more
But that's
knowledge
it.
or gain an experience to be like, okay, well, I don't want to go through
Yeah.
that again. So in order to avoid that, I'm going to do this, 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 and this. So
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And if you'll have me, I guess, Andrew, I would love to have you again on as a guest again, and maybe again we could talk all about I don't know, medical gaslighting, but also just how to prepare for like an appointment with your provider, because I
Sure.
feel like that it is an overwhelming process.
Absolutely.
And then how to manage your ostomy supplies. I mean, and you're the expert in that. I don't know anything about that.
I wouldn't say I'm an expert at it, but like I said, living with it, it's like I said, I wouldn't say I'm an expert at it, but learning about it and having to experience it and stuff like that, it's like, yeah, it's my experiences. I can relate some
you
of
are
that.
your own expert, right? Like,
Exactly.
so and I do have one request. You're gonna take us on a virtual vacation with your railroad experience when we're talking on the next episode. So you're gonna be like, okay,
Sure.
we're talking ostomy supplies, but look in the background. We're looking at Edmonton, or I don't know. I can't think of another random place right now, but something like that.
We'll see where I end up.
Yeah. Well, so everyone, make sure to follow Andrew at, what's your Instagram handle?
AJP_1982.
And with any questions, concerns, or anything, we'd love to hear from you. Please remember to follow Chronic Convos on YouTube. I really do need to do a better job of updating my TikTok. And then chronic.convos on Instagram, as well as my personal Instagram, which is at Chronically Gimperella. And or please listen to us on YouTube as well. And please remember to like and subscribe. This has been such an amazing episode. And again, Andrew, thank you so much. We have definitely had an emotional and cathartic experience today, and I love every second of it, and just so honored that you could be here with us today. And so I really truly appreciate you coming on, and you and I had talked about how exciting this was going to be, and it definitely lived up to its expectations, and exceeded my expectations, actually. So thank you again so much, and can't wait to have you back on a future episode. But thank you so much again, and to our chronic illness warriors out there, continue the fight, and you're not alone. And reach out for help. Reach out to one of us. We're here to listen and to help you navigate this overwhelming thing called life, and then all the other overwhelming curveballs that are thrown at you with the medical and healthcare system. So, and you got me in the U.S. and you got Andrew in Canada. So there we go. We're getting our own UN here together, slowly but surely. But anyways, everyone, stay strong, and hopefully you're having a relatively low symptom day today. So for everyone, thank you for listening, and tune in for next week. All right. So have a great day. All right. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.